All right, well, we're ready for session 5, homework, discussing days 1 to 3 of week 3. And so what I'd like to do, you have your pink sheets, and I'd like for you to lay those right next to another perspective. We'll get to another perspective for day 2. That way at least be ready to look over there. Notice there's some color highlighting on the pink sheets. What I did, it gives kind of the history of several of the kings of both Judah and the northern kingdom Israel. So the kings of the northern kingdom I put in red, and the kings of the southern kingdom I put in bold and blue. So the first 2 paragraphs there just basically tell us what happened after the death of Rehoboam. It says, in the 18th year of King Jeroboam, up north, Abijam, Rehoboam's son, began to reign over Judah. But he only reigned for 3 years. And it says he walked in all the sins that his father did before him. His heart was not wholly true to the Lord his God, as the heart of David his father had been. There was war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam. And then Abijam died, and Asa, his son, reigned in his place. So in the second paragraph, it says, in the 20th year of Jeroboam, Asa began to reign. And how long did he reign?
41.
41. So there's coming this long period of stability in the southern kingdom. And you're going to see a lot of kings changing place in the northern kingdom for various reasons. But, so let's go down to the third paragraph and we'll pick up what's going up north. Nadab, remember she referred to the fact that some of his sons' names sound like the names of Aaron. Remember Nadab and Abihu who died because they offered false fire? Well, anyway,
Yes.
Nadab, the son of Jeroboam, began to reign over Israel in the 2nd year of Asa, king of Judah, but he only reigned 2 years. And he did evil in the sight of the Lord and walked in the way of his father. And who was his father? Jeroboam. So just as Lisa referred to, Jeroboam is used as the example of evil kings throughout. Baasha, the son of Ahijah of the house of Issachar, conspired against him. And Baasha struck him down. And Nadab and all Israel, when they were laying siege to this town, Gibbethon. So Baasha killed him in the 3rd year of Asa, king of Judah, and reigned in his place. And as soon as he was king, he killed all the house of Jeroboam. Well, that fulfills exactly the prophecy. Remember, God had warned Jeroboam, because you have gone so far into idolatry, you've led the people into this, you've set up your own system. The only one of your sons that will ever be buried is this young son that was sick, and you sent your wife in disguise. He'll get a decent burial, but all the rest of them, they were just slaughtered. So he left the house to the house of Jeroboam, not one that breathed, until he had destroyed it, according to the word of the Lord that he spoke by his servant Ahijah the Shilonite. It was for the sins of Jeroboam that he sinned, and that he made Israel to sin, and because of the anger to which he provoked the Lord. Okay, so now we go down to the next paragraph. In the 3rd year of Asa, king of Judah, Baasha began to reign over all Israel, and he reigned 24 years. And guess what? He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and walked in the way of Jeroboam, that idolatrous way. So then the word of the Lord came to Jehu, the son of Hanani, against Baasha, saying, since I exalted you out of the dust and made you leader over my people Israel, and you have walked in the way of Jeroboam and made my people to sin, provoking me to anger with their sins, behold, I will utterly sweep away Baasha and his house. In other words, I'm going to do to you exactly what you did to Jeroboam and his house. And so then we go down to the last paragraph. So in the 26th year of Asa, king of Judah, meanwhile Judah's just going along under Asa's leadership. But here's another king, another change in leadership. Elah, the son of Baasha, began to reign over Israel in Tirzah. He only reigned 2 years. But his servant Zimri, who was commander of half his chariots, conspired against him. So now you have a case of treason. And while he was at Tirzah, drinking himself drunk in the house of Arza, who was over the household, Zimri came in and struck him down and killed him, and reigned in his place. And when he began to reign, just as soon as he had seated himself on the throne, what did he do? He struck down the house of Zimri. Or of Baasha, excuse me. He didn't leave him a single male of his relatives or even his friends. So Zimri destroyed all the house of Baasha according to the word of the Lord. Next paragraph. In the 27th year of Asa, king of Judah, Zimri reigned how long? 7 days. Okay, if you commit treason against the king, you'd best have a big bodyguard around you. It says the troops were still there where Baasha had been leading them, and the troops who, when they heard that Zimri has conspired and he's killed the king, all Israel made Omri, the commander of the army, king over Israel that day in camp. So Omri went up from Gibbethon, and all Israel with him, and they besieged the city where Zimri was hiding. And when Zimri saw that the city was taken, he went into the citadel of the king's house, and he burned the house over his head and died. He'd rather kill himself that way than fall into their hands, because they probably would have treated him quite badly. But again, it says that he, even though he was king for only 7 days, he walked in the ways of Jeroboam. Next paragraph. So then the people of Israel were divided into 2 parts. Half the people followed Tibni, the son of Ginath, to make him king, and half followed Omri.
She gave me one.
But the people who followed Omri overcame the people who followed Tibni, so Tibni died, and Omri became king. Meanwhile, it's the 31st year of Asa, king of Judah. So Omri began to reign. He reigned for 12 years, and he is the one that actually bought the hill of Samaria, set up the city of Samaria, and eventually the country would be known as Samaria. But next paragraph, he did what was evil. In fact, he did more evil than all who were before him. It just seemed like it just keeps going from bad to worse, to worse, to worse. And they all walked in the way of Jeroboam. When you start on that path of idolatry, it does not lead to good places. So, that brings us up to Ahab, which is really the guy that we wanted to get to for today. Next paragraph. In the 38th year of Asa, king of Judah, so it's toward the end of Asa's reign, Ahab, the son of Omri, began to reign. And Ahab ruled for 22 years. He did evil in the sight of the Lord more than all who were before him. We've just heard that about Omri. And again, they just keep piling sin upon sin upon sin. And as if it had been a light thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, he took for his wife Jezebel, the daughter of Ethbaal, king of Baal, which he built in Samaria. Or, excuse me, of the king of Sidonians, and went and served Baal and worshipped him. He erected an altar for Baal, and he set up these Asherah poles. And in the text, it explains just how evil and wicked those things were. Ahab did more to provoke the Lord to anger than all of the kings who were before him. And a lot of that is laid at the feet of his wife, because she had such an influence on him. And then we come to this last verse of that particular chapter. In his days, in Ahab's days, Hiel of Bethel built Jericho. It's lain in ruins ever since the days of Joshua, hundreds of years earlier. He laid its foundation at the cost of Abiram, his firstborn. So that's the foundations. That's the beginning of the project. He set up the gates, so that's the last thing you do. So at the end of the project, he lost his youngest son, Segub, in some kind of an industrial accident there. According to the word of the Lord, which he spoke by Joshua. And you can look at that back in Joshua chapter 6, verse 26. They have just, the Israelites have just come in and they have captured Jericho and conquered it. The walls have fallen down, it's in ruins. And at that time, this is what it says, Joshua imposed this curse. The man who undertakes the rebuilding of this city Jericho is cursed before the Lord. He will lay its foundation at the cost of his firstborn. He will set up its gates at the cost of his youngest. Exactly fulfilled hundreds of years later. It was a wicked city, and it was still under the curse. Okay, so that brings us up to Ahab, and you're familiar with the story. He's followed this idolatry, he's done these wicked things, and you remember that God sends Elijah to him, and Elijah tells him it's not going to rain for 3 full years. And that's where I want to bring in this another perspective. In Brenda's class, she has a bunch of DVDs that we can check out, and she has this one on the appointed times. It's about all of the feasts in the calendar of Israel: Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, Pentecost, and so on, and how Christ fulfills them, or how Christ is pictured in them. And it was the one on Pentecost that struck me, because for the first time, a lot of these things started coming together. So I just want to read the first paragraph is various quotes from that. This particular one, you could actually get it if you wanted it. You can order it from Day of Discovery. It's one of their productions. But anyway, the Feast of Weeks, or Pentecost, occurs 50 days after Passover, so a 7-week period. Those 7 weeks are crucial ones in the agricultural cycle of Israel. As one of the 3 men, the 3 men on this DVD are all Jewish believers. And one is actually a native of Israel from Beersheba. One is actually a professor from Moody Bible Institute who teaches on Jewish things. And another one has a radio program here in the States. And I'm not sure which one of them was speaking, but what he said was this: because of the fragile ecosystem of this region, an agricultural drama plays out each year between the land of Israel and the people of Israel and the God of Israel. And then they bring a lady on. Her name is Helen Franklin. She also is a native of Israel. She's the former director of the Biblical Landscape Reserve, which I don't know what that is, but anyway, that's who she is. She said this: the most crucial season for the 7 varieties of produce that Israel has, wheat, barley, figs, olives, date, honey, grapes, and pomegranates, are the 2 months, April and May. So right now, we are coming into these crucial months. We can pray for Israel during this crucial time. It's the crucial time between Passover and Shavuot, which is the Hebrew name for the Feast of Weeks or Pentecost. During those 2 months, we have 2 major phenomena of weather in Israel. The first is called a hamsing, which is a hot, dry wind that blows from the east-southeast. Now, what is east and southeast of Israel? Desert. So you have this wind coming from this hot, dry desert. And she says, within just a few hours, it will raise temperatures by 15 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit. And also lower the humidity to below 15%. Both aspects are terribly important for the pollination of the fruit. This hot, dry weather breaks, so to speak, when the winds shift, coming from the north and northwest, or west and northwest. Well, what's over there? The Mediterranean Sea. So you're bringing in all this moisture and rain. You can imagine the danger if the flower is open and the pollen is exposed and the rain washes all the pollen off the stamen before pollination can occur. If that happens, there will be no harvest of olive, figs, grapes, and so on 4 or 5 months later. It's not only that every day of that 7-week period is nerve-wracking, but every hour of every day the farmers are a nervous wreck. And it's all in the hands of God. There's nothing we can do about it. So what they've said, there's this relationship between the land, the geography of the land, the people, and God. Now, back in Moses' day and, in Bible times, if the people were obeying God, they didn't have to be a bundle of nerves about it. They could have just trusted him. Because what had God promised? Well, let's go on to the next paragraph. As I have reflected on what I learned from the teachers on this DVD, I see even more significance in what the Lord promised his people in Leviticus 26, 1-5. He said, don't make idols for yourselves. Don't set up carved images like the Asherah poles, or sacred pillars, or place a sculpted stone in your land, bow down to it, for I am Yahweh, your God. You must keep my Sabbaths and revere my sanctuary. Don't go off to tell Dan. Go to my sanctuary. I am the Lord. If you follow my statutes and faithfully observe my commands, I will give you rain when? At the right time. After the pollination, so that the crops can grow. And the land will yield its produce, and the trees of the field will bear their fruit. Your threshing will continue until grape harvest. And then the grape harvest will continue until sowing time. So it's like one crop is going to catch up with the next and the next. You'll just constantly be having food coming in. You'll have plenty of food to eat and live securely. I will give peace to this land. You will not be nervous wrecks. You can just trust me. So the farmers didn't have to be nervous wrecks, wondering if the rain would come too soon and wash all the pollen away or come too late for the grain to grow, because the weather is in the hands of God. But what God? The loving, faithful God who had promised to bless those who obey him. They could rest assured that he would once again provide a bountiful crop. But God also went on to warn them further on in that same chapter. But if you will not obey me, I will proceed to discipline you 7 times for your sins. I will break down your strong pride. I will make your sky like iron, no rain for 3 years. And your land like bronze. The dirt's just going to dry up and get hard as a rock. And your strength will be used up for nothing. Your land will not yield its produce, and the trees of the land will not bear their fruit. And what struck me was this, how did God describe the promised land before they went? He says it's a land flowing with
milk and honey.
Milk and honey. And so I always picture this big, lush thing, like the Nile Delta, always green. That's not where God put them. He deliberately chose a land for them where they would always have to depend on him. And I thought, isn't that what he wants to do for us? He doesn't put us in easy places, not yet. That's eternity. We won't have to worry about things in eternity, but he puts us where we have to trust him for the results. They had to trust him. They had to depend on him to send the right weather at the right time every year. It could be lush and green and flow with milk and honey after the spring rains came, but that depended upon how the people were relating to God and his commandments. This whole concept sheds new insight into his purpose for withholding the rain in Ahab's day. That wasn't an arbitrary thing. That directly ties back to what he said he would do. Obey me and I'll bless the land. Disobey me and I won't allow the land to produce its crops. I am the Lord. It was an exact fulfillment of what he had said hundreds of years ago. So that just to me was just very fascinating, to kind of tie it together like that. I never thought about the geography being so significant, but that's where God placed them. Okay, so that brings us back to the bottom of the second page of the pink sheet, and we're picking up now with this really ugly incident that just reveals the character of Jezebel to the full. In the latter years of Ahab's rule in 1 Kings 21. Now Naboth, the Jezreelite, had a vineyard in Jezreel, beside the palace of Ahab, king of Samaria. And after this, Ahab said to Naboth, "Give me your vineyard, that I may have it for a vegetable garden, because it's near my house, and I'll give you a better one for it, or if it seems good to you, I'll give you its value in money." Seems like a fair deal, right? What's wrong with that? Well, Naboth said to Ahab, "The Lord forbid that I should give you the inheritance of my fathers." What was God's rule about the land?
It was to stay within their group. It was
Right.
their inheritance, their ancestors.
And you might sell it temporarily, but what happened every 50 years? They called it the year of Jubilee. It goes back to the original owners. The inheritance stays within the clan. But more than that, God also said, actually, the land is mine. You're just living here as temporary overseers. You're taking care of tenants, and you're taking care of the land, but it's actually my land. So Naboth said, "I'm not going to go against God's word." And Ahab should have known this. He's an Israelite. He's not a foreigner, but he hasn't thought about God's ways in so long that, he thinks he's making a good deal. So what's his reaction? He went into his house vexed and sullen because of what Naboth the Jezreelite had said to him. For he had said, "I will not give you the inheritance of my fathers." And he lay down on his bed and turned away his face and would eat no food. But Jezebel, his wife, came in to him and said, "Why is your spirit so vexed that you eat no food?" And he said to her, "Because I spoke to Naboth the Jezreelite and said to him, 'Give me your vineyard for money, or else if it please you, I'll give you another vineyard for it.' And he said, 'I will not give you my vineyard.' And Jezebel, his wife, said, 'Do you now govern Israel? Arise, eat bread, let your heart be cheerful. I'll give you the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite.' And so she wrote letters in Ahab's name and sealed them with his seal, and she sent the letters to the elders and the leaders who lived with Naboth in his city. And she wrote, 'Proclaim a fast and set Naboth at the head of the people.'" Set him up. "And set 2 worthless men opposite him, and let them bring a charge against him, saying, 'You have cursed God and the king.' Then take him out and stone him to death." And the men of the city, the elders, the leaders, did as Jezebel had sent word to them. I suspect everyone did what Jezebel said, because if you didn't, she's killed how many prophets of God? This is a very evil woman. And so they did exactly what she said. The 2 worthless men came in, they said what they said, and the people took him out and stoned him. And then they sent to Jezebel and said, "He's been stoned, he's dead. We've done what you asked." As soon as Jezebel heard that Naboth had been stoned and was dead, she said, "Ahab, arise, take possession of the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite, which he refused to give you for money, for he's not alive, but dead." And as soon as Ahab heard that he was dead, didn't ask any questions, he arose to go down to the vineyard to take possession of it. And then the word of the Lord came to Elijah and said, "Go down and meet Ahab, king of Israel. He's down in the vineyard of Naboth, and he's gone in there to take possession. And you shall say to him, 'Thus says the Lord, have you killed and also taken possession?' You shall say to him, 'Thus says the Lord, in the place where dogs licked up the blood of Naboth, shall dogs lick your blood.'" And Ahab said, "Have you found me, O my enemy?" And he answered, "I have found you, because you have sold yourself to do what is evil in the sight of the Lord. And I'm going to bring disaster upon you. I'm going to utterly burn you up and cut off from you every male, bond or free, in Israel. And I'll make your house like the house of Jeroboam and like the house of Baasha, for the anger to which you've provoked me, because you made Israel sin. And Jezebel, of her, the Lord also said, the dogs shall eat Jezebel within the walls of Jezreel." And that happened to her. If you recall, the army comes in, Jehu, I think it was, came in with a force, and she looks out the window, and he looks up and says, "Anybody on my side up there?" And 2 eunuchs, "Yep." And they pitch her out the window, and she falls to her death. And Jehu is so disgusted with her, just leave her out there. Goes in and eats. And then he thought, well, she was a king's daughter. I suppose we ought to bury her. Hey, you guys, go out and bury her. They go out and there's nothing left except, I think, her hands. I didn't look it up again, but I mean, it was really horrific. God did not give her an honorable burial, that's for sure. But the summary, the sad summary, the last verse there was no one like Ahab, who devoted himself to do what was evil in the Lord's sight, because his wife incited him. Just an ugly, ugly story. But next week we get to look at a southern king of Judah, Joash, and that'll be a little more uplifting. But it's just fascinating to me that God does exactly what he says he will do. So, did you have any questions or comments from as you did the homework or as you were reading?
It makes you appreciate Leviticus all over again, though.
Yeah, really. Because I have never really put all this together before.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's funny how Brenda's classes and your classes
I
are
know.
tied together.
I know. Yeah. Within weeks of each other. But
Yes.
on the same topic. Very helpful. Oh, and by the way, I found out yesterday that Jen Wilkin is bringing out a new study on Revelation. So that's what we will do in the fall. I thought,